Okay, good evening. Thank you for coming this evening for our third meeting with Long Range Facility Planning. Again, I'm Mike Ware, the Director of Operations for the district. And we'll have, when people come up and speak, they'll introduce themselves. But a couple housekeeping items. Again, this is being live streamed, so if you have a question or comment, we'll try to get you that microphone. There's Christina back there, she has that. There's water and pizza back there, so please feel free to take a whole box of pizza when you leave, if you don't eat it all. And you guys, the restrooms are down the hallway to the right there. So tonight, we have a bit of a different type of session. Last time we dove really heavy into our FCA, our facility condition assessment. And I know that was a lot of information, a lot of things to digest and go through. Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit more about capacity. We're going to review some of the data that we did from the last meeting. So if you recall, we had you walk around and do some check marks on priorities. We aggregated that data. We have that to show you, have a little discussion, think about if we want to add anything, make any changes. And then from there, we'll do a little activity. You can see some of these posters here. We'll have a kind of a dot activity just to kind of go through the process of where you all feel based off the data, based off your observations, where our schools land based off our goals and our priorities. And real quickly, you can see some of the pictures. These are recent pictures, either from our FCA, and I'll go through them real quick, just to, our facility condition assessment, or currently what's going on in our buildings. So this is fun. I'm going to go over here real quick. Is this okay, Josh? Great. So just to give you some context, this is a window at the Commons at the high school. It was recently broken, unfortunately, by someone throwing a baseball or whatnot, but you can see the inside framing of that is all corroded. It's pretty nasty. You can tell that that's probably not very efficient system right there. So that's a current window on the upper part of our Commons at the high school. This picture, there's another picture down there, but this is a boiler at the middle school that is currently shut down because when you come up and see, it's leaking. That's a problem when you have a hot water boiler. It won't work properly. There's some safety issues there. This is probably, John, is this the original or this is a
2000 bond.
2000 bond boiler? Price tag to replace just like for like, about $80,000. If we wanted to go propane, which is a more efficient, smaller system, that one propane unit to heat the entire middle school, that's about $150,000 installed. And so we're dealing with this right now. We're evaluating, we're trying to figure out how, what resources we can utilize going into next fiscal year to pay for a replacement. But this is an example of things that are failing. Yes.
I'm assuming propane is more expensive to run.
John, can I speak to that?
So the current boiler is they're called closed loop, which is not high pressure, diesel fuel, biofuel. And the new one, it runs on propane. The current one we have, being as inefficient as it is, we're running right around 74%. So 26 cents of every dollar is going up our flue. Whereas the propane one that's Mike was talking about, it's about 150, is about 92 to 96% efficient, which would be 6 to 8 cents a waste going up the stack.
But like diesel versus propane.
The cost of it?
Just the
Yeah,
cost.
so currently we're paying $3.85 the last time we got diesel here at the high school last week per gallon, and propane. Our district has about 8,000 gallons of propane that we need on an auto bill. We pay about anywhere from the 224 and 265 a gallon.
So currently it's less.
So yeah, so we would pay more upfront, but we'd gain a lot more in efficiency and I don't know if anyone has diesel fuel in their house, but it stinks and it's dirty and maybe a lot better.
Good question, thank you. Real quick, this is a picture at CRE, Clacton River Elementary. We have a pipe that's currently leaking or was leaking. Did we fix that? Did we do our methods to fix it? But again, another example of just making sure, thanks, that things just randomly can happen due to age of a building. CRE, I know it's our newest building, but yet it is still 23 years old. So things start to go past their life cycle. when we start talking about the 20 years plus. This is a snapshot of our beautiful parking lot at the high school. This is what we call alligation because it looks like an alligator skin, right? And so it's all spreading apart. It's turning into rubble, and it's really pretty much a dirty area, and it's not fun to drive in. So right now, when we have all this rain, problematic for many reasons, not safe either, or compliant in many ways. I wanted to show really quick our one of the tennis courts at the middle school. You can see this large crack in the middle. This is one of many. And you can see also if you go into the middle school tennis courts where the court's kind of pushing together, kind of think like seismic plates kind of pushing together, we're creating unsafe surfaces for our students and our community. Again, an area that needs to be addressed for community use, our student athletes, and then our students for extracurricular activity or co-curricular. This is just a close-up version of that boiler. So if you really want to get into it, that's what it's looking like. And then this is the flat roof over middle school, Estacada Middle School. So we did do a seismic rehabilitation project in 2019. It only focused on the two ends, the auditorium, and then the gym side of the roof. This is the flat roof where you get closer, you can see some of the bubbling, some of the uneven surfaces. Just it's dated, it's past its life cycle. We commonly have leaks coming from this area, improper drainage, whatnot. Okay? So again, just wanted to give you context of what you're seeing there. We thought it'd be important to show you all, and next time we'll bring another round of pictures just to give you some more information. Back to the activity, we'll discuss that in a few minutes. And then we're going to discuss capacity, a little bit of enrollment, where our current enrollment is, and review a piece of report from the city. They did a housing capacity, is that right? Housing capacity? Housing, yeah, analysis of what's going on within the city limits, and Danny will be talking a little bit about that. And then finally, we have about 40 minutes or so to do a work session, and those are the questions that you see on there that we'll go through, and we'll discuss the process from there. Any questions before we get going? Okay, we go through the meeting norms again, ask questions, provide input, allow discussion for productive meeting. This is a safe place, so no yelling at Ben, okay? Just be nice. Real quick, vision and goals based on votes. So we did that activity where you guys all walked around, looked at those indicators, the subjects as well, and voted. This is what the data came out to be. Safety, character and feel, rethinking our spaces, and food and dining came up to be the top of the choices. And so those are some of the higher priority items. Safety rose to the top, obviously. Looking at the character and feel of our current buildings, thinking about how the teaching and learning environment and rethinking the use of our spaces. An example would be the use of our current library at the high school. How is that being used? The food, dining, social areas also came up as a higher need as we want to serve more healthy food, be able to think about the equipment that we're providing or that we have so we can produce food from scratch. Then evaluating, looking at outdoor spaces, sustainability, occupational learning, so that's CTE. And these are not off by a lot. So these are all very high and it's very clear these are all very much a priority. Special education and learning, flexible and adaptability, and support for teachers kind of round up the top, and program that around the top. From this list, I'd like to open it up to see if there's any discussion. Did we miss anything? Do we want to add? Do we think that we need to start over? Because this is the time to discuss that.
Can you blow those up a little bit?
I can try. Yeah, you're not going to see it very well, but that's the best I can do there. Yes,
Are
John.
these from our meeting where we prioritized?
Yes, this is from our last
This
meeting.
is our decision.
This is from your guys' voting, yes.
Is it a problem that there's not much spread between the top and the bottom?
No, I don't believe there's a problem. It's just the nature of how we voted.
Yeah, I just wonder if that is too broad of a goal. You know what I mean?
Could be.
Is it too broad? Because
It-
basically we're saying we want it all.
Yeah.
So-
Well, we do actually, and you might be right. Do we need to get a little more granular? And based off the data that we reviewed last meeting as well, you could be right there. Thank you.
Yeah, so like with with classes that we don't currently have at the school, at the high school, and if we built facilities for more tech type things, that would then have to also include like additional teachers that can actually teach
Yes.
that stuff. And, you get a variety there. You have to, I don't know how we can have these things, but you have to consider the whole ramifications of what we're asking.
Exactly.
That's a, two more teachers is two more teachers is,
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars extra a year and whatever. So.
That's a great point, and thank you for that. I mean, we do need to think of the full pie. We build a new building or we add to the building, we need to add teachers, we need to add custodian staff, we need to consider our meal service staff. Do we have enough to prep and provide meals? Our support staff, administration, secretarial, it's the whole thing. It's not just we build a building and they all come. Be nice. Yes, Christine.
Just to be clear, the bond will not cover that FTE.
Yes. So, yeah, but naturally, the more kids, the more money the district receives, right? Per child. And so that's a good point. But in theory, we would have the money because we have the
And now
enrollment.
we have people that is new districts now that driving their case to other districts to go to school. And we don't want that.
We do not.
Yeah, we want them to stay in our school
Yeah.
district.
And that's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that one up. And we're seeing a little bit of both. We're seeing parents pull, and we're seeing some even out of district kids coming into our building or in our district because their parents want to be a part of our district. So it's kind of a both scenario. And we'll talk about where we're at in enrollment here in a few minutes, but thank you. So do we want to try to get a little more granular in these areas? I'm not sure. Yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think when we did the exercise, there was a lot of overlap
Yeah,
in some of these areas that could have been distilled into different categories that would give us more choices. And just optics wise, I was hoping that this is not gonna be shown as in like, hey, our long range planning team decided that support for teachers was our least favorite goal.
well, in optics wise, you're right, because you don't see the full definition. This is the support for teachers, and in parentheses, it's supposed to say space. I'd like to propose maybe a different approach because these are fairly similar. What are your all thoughts on if after this meeting, we compile a quick survey that has the data, maybe we combine some of these, get a little more specific to have you guys complete an online survey, quick and easy, where we can get more data and bring it to the next meeting. Do you like that a little bit better? And if you can think of anything that you want added to that survey, like Mike or Christina asked this question, please let us know, okay? Because this is your time to give us your opinion and voice, all right? So we'll give that a shot.
I think that one thing that definitely needs to be on it is an explanation or like bullet points below it. Like this would include safety means we're talking about, the building, like entryways and exits and doors and stuff, but just more like a couple of little bullet
Sure,
points so
yeah.
that
Yeah.
because I think when we had it all listed up here, we had a lot of questions for you,
Yeah.
like, what does this mean? What does this mean?
Yeah.
And so.
I think my favorite group was sitting here. They had a lot of good questions. And they were really good questions. Sometimes I was like, I don't know how to answer that question. Yeah. That's a good point. Being more detailed and specific. Because the reality is, and we'll talk throughout tonight about timeline, but I'll just jump into it. The reality is we don't have a lot of time. Our next meeting, we would like to be able to, again, if we collect some new data, review that, look at potential population study and start building budget scenarios. Like we're at that level where we need to start building that so that we can make some tough decisions, recommendations that we can bring to our board of directors. So that's yes, Chris.
I feel like within a bond, there's also that element of like, we're getting close to the time of year where like the state tells our district how much money we have coming.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's a variable that would be interesting to consider or hear about in connection to like if we're going down from years before, because that puts us into a deficit compared to even last year. Are we going up compared to last year? and just along those lines.
Yeah, Christina, can you speak a little bit about what we're hearing budget-wise?
Yeah, so right now there's different things. So there's the governor has recommended a 9.6 billion budget for school districts. That's been seconded up by Ways and Means. A lot of such as unions, OSBAs, a lot of groups are getting together and saying we need 10.3 million to operate. But so we're building our budget on 9.6 billion, and I know that we are going to have some communication going out soon on what that would look like for us.
Can you speak to what the budget was last biennium?
Yeah. Last biennium, it was 9.3 billion. No, 9.6 is what we're building.
Great, thank you. And again, we've talked about a little bit, and we can continue to have this conversation, but our capital improvement fund, right? We get money from different entities, mainly the excise tax that we get it, and then we do a transfer every year. And so we have to consider, as Christina's budgeting, are we going to be able to transfer money? And then we are seeing a lower amount come in from even though there's all this construction going on, there's not a lot of permits because we think they front loaded it when they did it back in 2020 or 2021 to buy all that property. So,
The state school fund is mainly for our operating budget to keep our teachers and support our students. It's not necessarily to support our schools and buildings in that way.
and we'll get off topic, but this is why we write a lot of grants, right? That's why we get grants. And we do a lot of grants lately, more so than lately. Okay, let's get back into this. So spectrum activity, what we're going to have you do is just a very quick activity, and you can split up. We want you to hit every poster, but essentially based off last meeting, all that data, you saw the pictures, the discussions that we've had about the current need of our buildings, what we are trying to achieve based off our vision and what we want our children to experience while they're in our schools. Quickly, it's a one dot activity. Go to each of these 4 posters and just put it closer to on a yes or a no. And on whether you feel like Clackamas River, for example, is Clackamas River meeting or falls within our goals that we have established and we discussed. If you think, maybe a little bit, then it's going to be maybe in the middle. Or yeah, a little bit, no, maybe not. It's going to be more no. Does that make sense? Did I explain it okay? Okay. So if we could let's just take 5-7 minutes to go through each of these 4. You can split up again and one dot on where you think our buildings land based off our vision and our goals that we've talked about.
What are the vision and the goals?
Well, so it's,
We have reference.
yeah, so it's I know we're going to go back. We're going to go back and redo this, but based off preliminary, what we've done. So we're going to dive deeper into this, but this will give us, and you can utilize this as your benchmark, or you can go based off what we've discussed the last 3 meetings and what you reviewed in the last facility condition assessment.
Mike, just out of curiosity, how many votes total was 60 the top?
I think we may have been given too many votes in that activity. And the color's not significant.
No, they're not significant.
These orange beavers.
Yeah.
The green next to the. Rubbing blue.
Were you Uber Ellen today? Is this the same representative? What?
Okay. We'll take that, and again, we'll be able to look at what looking at in terms of where our schools land. I'm gonna jump into capacity, and then Christina's gonna come up and talk about enrollment, but I wanted to show you our current capacity at our schools. So here's the Estacada High School, and when you're looking at this, I'll give you the key or the indicator. So blue means it's a teacher, rooms used for teaching and learning. So all the rooms in blue, highlighted in blue, are used for teaching and learning. Anything in yellow could be a support service, not used for teaching and learning, maybe an alternate service, like Aspire, if you will, okay? Although that could be related to teaching and learning because of our students aspiring for their future. And so you can see that at some level, 95% of the high school is being used for teaching and learning. And so that when we talk about capacity, I mean, we're there. Even though this building feels big and it feels like we don't have a lot of kids, it's still, if we wanted to maintain our ratio for our 1 to 32, 1 to 32 at the secondary level, like we are starting to look at, we either have to expand out, we have to look at more buildings, or we need to make that ratio less or bigger, I guess, if you will. Here is Clackamas River Elementary. And I know it's kind of, let me see if I can clean this up a little bit, but I don't know if I can. So all three of the pods are being used. We have one space that is our food pantry currently that has been a classroom in the past. That is being used, not being used as a classroom. And then we have a daycare center over in that other kind of right-hand side corner that's being used. Now that room is outfitted and kind of made for a daycare or pre-K type setting, but it's still a classroom that is something that we're not using directly to our students enrolled in the Estacada School District. But you can see we're at 1 to 25 at elementary, is that correct? To maintain that, we're again still at the capacity of our buildings. And I don't have the library highlighted, but that's also in use for teaching and learning. Yes.
With the different blue, with the different classes that are blue, does that, some of those classes may not have like a 1 to 25 or a 1 to 32?
Some may not. Like at the high school, we do have a variance of like the ratio.
Right.
And so that's a good example. So, and a good point. Some of them are not at that full ratio.
And also if you go back to the high school one, just for clarity, just to actually show that we're actually at more capacity, the upper rectangle there that's that one there, that's actually 2 classrooms, and the upper half is used for our ELD program.
ELD, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, to give you some context and perspective of where our kids are learning, some of these classrooms don't have any windows. This one right here used to be our tech office like 5-10 years ago, and then it put back into a tech office, but it's a enclosed cinder block, if you will, room. And it's nice with nice lighting and stuff, but there's no windows. It's kind of stuffy. And unfortunately, our kids have to learn in that area at this time. No. There's an egress. Like they get it, yeah, just the door, right? Middle school, we are again jam-packed. We have a little more space below in the second level or the bottom level, but we have had to displace or transition. Where's Elena? Transition certain extended programs out of the stadium classrooms into different spaces so that we could do teaching and learning in those spaces under the stadium, the classroom spaces under there. And we are using, again, every one of these classrooms for different capacities and different levels, but all focused on teaching and learning. This is a great example here and at the middle school when you think about the cafeteria or the library, right? Library at the middle school doesn't get used to its capacity or to what we probably have used it in the past. And this is not necessarily my lane, I'll say that right away, but it's underutilized, so could we reutilize that space for something else? Our cafeteria at the middle school is very small. It's not built for 500 plus kids. And we often have capacity issues where if you have middle school kids, they used to eat outside in the stadium. And that was some response to COVID, but also just knowing that we are just jam packed in there and they quickly go outside. So it's like maybe not the best experience. Could we utilize library space to open up and make a bigger cafeteria? Just things to consider as we start building scenarios. And then River Mill, and I was with our little tour, I was giving them a quick data point on River Mill and the high school. High school has currently 501 students. River Mill at this moment has 509 students enrolled. And so again, we're seeing that swelling at the elementary level in terms of where they're going. Obviously, River Mill is one of them, but we're seeing a lot of younger families, younger students coming in. And you can see we have one classroom available. That classroom is being used for specialized instruction in different programs, but if we had to displace or transition that person out, we could utilize that yellow space as a classroom. Our portables that we put in there last summer, we have adult transition and a Todos Juntos program, so some support programs, and then our pre-K that we fully fund, and then a daycare. So there is some space with the new portables that we have, but if it's not this year, the way we're seeing the influx of residents, it'll be within the next year that we're going to have to start putting more of our Estacada School District kids in our portable units. It's just the reality of where we're at. Okay, if any questions on capacity or where we're at currently in our classroom space in our buildings? 426? She's going to tell you. Let's see if I'm right. I doubt it, though.
Okay, here's the enrollment as of March 31st. You'll see here that Clackamas River has 454 students. You have it broken down there by class and grade level. And then River Mill has 507 students. Total elementary is 961 students. The middle school has 428 students, and the high school has 500 students. So we're at 1,889, which is 129 more than last year at the same time. Yep.
Is that number increased compared to last year more in the elementary or in across the board?
Great question. It is, you can kind of see here, last year, elementary Clackamas River had, is higher by 38 students. River Mill is higher by 70 students.
Oh, there's last year.
The middle school is higher by 25 students, and the high school is down 4 students.
Do we have a breakdown per grade?
It is broken.
Read the-
Yeah, it is broken down. I can't point. Can I point?
Yeah, it's pretty small. Okay.
Generally speaking, this year's senior class is the smallest class of the bunch.
Yes, the senior class, I can go through. The kindergarten class is 148 students. The first grade is 157 students. Second grade is 154 students. Third grade is 178. Fourth grade is 171. Fifth grade is 153. Sixth grade is 147. Seventh grade is 142. Eighth grade is 139. How do I move this? Ooh, there. Ninth grade is 137. 10th grade is 134. 11th grade is 121. And our graduating class is 108.
So it looks like somewhere around fourth to fifth grade is where we're really gonna be at full capacity. I mean, that's where we're gonna really run into.
Start
issues.
busting out the seams. Yep.
Thank you.
Maybe you're going to talk about this, but the building capacity compared to the enrollment.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how the building in the city and the number of housing units related to the different school boundaries, how that is going to potentially impact enrollment at specific elementary schools.
Both great questions. I don't know what each school's capacity is per student. We might have to bring that back to you. I don't have that on mine. And this is just a really fun chart. It's comparing us for the last few years, our growth each month by month. And you can see the very top one is our current year.
Christine, could you go back one slide real quick?
Yep.
So like Clyde Sherwood says 18 regular classroom teachers.
Yep.
But that's just grade level teachers. It's not including PE, music.
No, it's just K through 5 classroom teachers.
How many more are there? This would be going back a couple slides, but like, how many more classrooms in Clackamas River and River Mill are there available? I mean, only the portables at River Mill, and then at Clackamas River, are there any classrooms available? I know we just kind of went over it, but I just didn't.
Yeah, now that you have the numbers, you want to think about it again.
Yeah, so at Clackamas River, to keep the main ratio of 1 to 25, we have 1 classroom left. At River Mill, we have potential 4 spaces that we could utilize. 3 of them would be in a portable unit. 1 would be inside River Mill Elementary.
Great questions. Okay. Any other questions about enrollment before I hand it to Danny? Kind of talk about.
How many more students can a district
accommodate? Yeah, so how much per I will have to get back to you. The capacity, I don't have that number. Mike and I will have to talk and bring that back to you.
I just think that's compelling.
Yeah.
Slated next to the projected building and
Mhm.
housing units that approved in town for people to see that, like, we're going to be over capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I
Maybe
guess for me, it would be like asking Melanie or somebody how many, like putting the permits on top of school district, like on which school district, which school each of these permits. Like we've issued 800 housing permits, but they're all in the River Mill School District versus we've only issued 200 housing permits in the Clackamas River School District for elementaries, I think is what she's trying to get at.
Yeah.
The building capacity is going to be different than what we really, our vision or standard is of education, right? So like the Estacada High School, we could probably pack in here 1,200, 1,300 kids. And in fact, I think in one day back in the logging days, like that's what it really was, or that's what they say it was. Do we want that? We don't want that. And so really when we think about capacity, it goes back to that ratio. We want to have a standard of 1 to 32 or 1 to 25 in order to maintain that, because the data shows that that's the best practice for teaching and learning, and for students to be proficient, we need to consider more space. And so when we're looking at the capacity piece of it, we're not going to ever be in a compliance, fire, life safety compliance for capacity. It's more of how do we want to structure our classes for ratio.
Oh, that's scary. Okay.
Just to add to that, I teach high school and middle school too. And my classes, none of the classes that I teach 3 classes from the middle school. And one class is 35, one's 32, and one's 33. So that's a lot of kids. That's almost double the state, teacher-student ratio. So I teach manufacturing and welding at the high school here, but I teach the middle schoolers too. So it's enjoyable work, but we got a lot of kids. So just keep that in mind.
So who chooses the ratio, like 1 to 25? Did we all vote on that, or did like the district vote on that, or is it a standard?
Usually the district looks at best practices and makes a decision with their leadership, kind of balancing the budget and things like that.
There is funding differentiation between large group and small group. There's, different funding for different sizes as well.
I was just gonna say, in 2015-16, when we did our first facility master plan, we did a survey, and that's where we came up with the 24 to 25 students in elementary, and the 32 was in 2015-16 to that study with the old superintendent.
Which one is, what's?
Secondary versus elementary. So 25 at the elementary level.
Real quick, I got a couple of numbers. Sorry. We've gone through a lot of this at the school board, so I'm gonna steal some city numbers. Since this was almost a year, no, it was 2 years ago. Faraday Hills has 404 lots. Valley View is 64. If somebody has a calculator, that would be helpful. These are single family lots that as of 4/1/21 were platted and ready to build. So 404 plus 64 plus 43, 111, 102, and 118. In addition to 69 apartments at Eagle Ridge, 96 at Dugan Estates. And I know there's been other subdivisions since these, including the 36 that are currently being built. And then the other thing was, if you took the biggest class size, which is around 170 times 13 grade levels, that's 2,210 kids versus the 1,889 now. And that's all from math. Sorry. In addition to that, another email I got from the city. In 2020, we built 133 single-family residents in the city limits. 2021 was 217. 2022 was 193. And as of yesterday, there was 87 building permits pulled, but those include electrical permits too. So it's down quite a bit. And that's just in the city limits, not in Clackamas County.
So I guess the next question is so when the city issues these permits, are they just issuing, I don't guess I was asking, how do they get that number? Like, where they say, stop, no, we can't, our infrastructure can't handle this? Or if you're going to build here, you need to put in a lot more you know, I mean, hold these builders accountable and say, you need to put in a lot more than just, you know, make millions on houses. You got to put something back into our community. You know, so, you know, where is that line? And where does that, how do we get that to be? The property taxes don't build everything. There's no way. That's not how a city is built. A city is built, like, if you go down to Southern California, they have everything planned before they even issue one lot. They know where everything's gonna go, right? But it's a plan. And they say, we need 5 parks per every, you know, 800 houses built. So they make the builders build the 5 parks or whatever they're gonna do, right? So
Well, we're
how do we
lucky,
get that into our schools?
we're lucky enough to have Melanie here, so she will jump in on that.
I don't have all the numbers that Ben does, but off the top of my head. But the city, when the plans for these residential developments get approved, we can't necessarily say, well, we're out of infrastructure as far as, you know, the sewer plant or water, or it's going to be hard on our streets. We're not allowed to say, we're done doing that. We're not going to expand anymore, so nobody else can come here. We're required to move ahead and provide the needs for the community, which is what the city council is working on doing and setting that vision so that we can build a new sewer plant, which we would need anyway, because the sewer plant that we have is built in the 60s and it's had several upgrades along the way, but it just doesn't last forever. And the requirements of what, you know, was okay to put back in the river in the 60s is much different than what's okay now. And now that we know, you know, so there's things that the city is doing to keep up with the growth and try to keep ahead of it. They also pay system development charges for they put in the streets, and they pay system development charges for water, for sewer, for parks, for the storm system, and they pay that construction excise tax that comes back to the schools. And so there are ways that we're recouping that, but it's a stretch to grow as fast as we're growing right now. But they're all things that are being taken into consideration. And one of those, when Ben was listing off those developments, I would just also add they're mostly all to the north. So I would guess that's in the Rivermill boundary. So at some point, that'll have to be considered also, that's just where the bulk of the growth is happening. And yeah. Anyway.
Thank you, Melanie. Anything else? I might answer your question on the next slide, but we'll see, hopefully. So, as we've discussed in past meetings, we are currently in the process of getting a population study. It's in the works as we speak. But because I don't have that to show you today, we still wanted to bring capacity concerns to the table, obviously. So the city of Estacada was kind enough to let us use their housing capacity analysis to kind of just give you a couple pinpoints to just see where our trajectory is headed. The 2 lines that we're really wanting to focus on are the 2 top blue lines. So the first blue line that's a little bit lower was the initial projection that they had created using the population that was given to them. At that point, Johnson Economics, who performed the analysis, took into consideration that the estimates did not reflect the rapid home building that was happening at the time. So they went ahead and worked with the city and pulled new census information and permitting information, and were able to come up with a new population based off of what was happening at that moment. So that's that blue line. As you can see, the top blue line, the trajectory is going up a little bit more. The numbers are higher. So this is a 20-year projection of our growth in the city limits in our urban growth boundary. So that is showing that the forecast is saying roughly the population will grow about 8,800 people by 2041. And it's starting there at like 4,400. So as we said earlier, and Ben mentioned with a lot more numbers, this is just within the city limits. The Estacada school district boundary is significantly larger than in area than those numbers. So one thing that I did note was that in there they did say that our city has a younger population than the county of children. So we are bursting at the seams with children already. Some other population projected numbers are not coming back accurately. Like we are blowing them out of the water. So this is from September 2021. We hopefully will have more recent numbers. And then also I pulled our voter numbers and our stats for that last week for the voters within the Estacada School District boundaries, and that's 12,373. So if that just shows you the amount of people that we have that aren't even being used in these projections. So that just shows us the trajectory of what's occurring and the need that we're going to have there. Any questions?
Neighboring districts have similar growth issues?
Good.
We are unique, actually. We're one of the fastest or the biggest growing city in the state of Oregon. In Clackamas County, just perspective, we grew, what was it? She said 77% since 2001, or I didn't hear the date. Clackamas County, other cities grew 20%. So we went from 77%, others went to 20%. So we are growing.
The same thing.
Well, the data from this report is indicating that. So I'm not sure where Malala probably made up their numbers. Well, yes, it is. Very much competitive.
Really big number.
I mean, one of the trends that we've seen that isn't reflected in some of the older forecasts is this trend of people moving to more rural areas like Estacada or Malala since the pandemic. And that has just continued to happen and continues to blow the projections out of the water.
Sandy used to be small when I moved in there, it was one lot. And then it grew so big now that build a new school. They had to. And one thing I like about, I don't like Sandy, I'm just saying. I'm just saying that that's what I saw, and when they built their school, they were thinking of 48. Okay. They built a lot in our school to hold the capacity of people moving in. But now you're driving through Sandy, it looks like driving through downtown Portland. We've all been there. So I'm thinking we're gonna get growing pretty fast. And we need to think about what it.
I appreciate you saying that because that's the point that we're getting at here. These numbers may not be completely accurate or up to date, being that they're coming up on 2 years old. But what if this projection does occur, where are we going to teach these students?
I can't, I'll bring you the mic, but on my way, I can tell you that through the pandemic, we were the only school district in Clackamas County with growth.
I think it would be compelling to add an image on this graph that shows at what point our current district capacity would be filled with our goal of 24 to 1 or 1 to 24 or 1 to 32.
I will work on that for the next meeting.
There would be a lot of assumptions in that because we would have to assume like how many are in each of those houses. So that would be the one hard part on that.
Well, the growth is projected based off of the estimate of what's in each house. Sorry, I'm referencing my notes, but each house on average in Estacada is 3.04 people. So you can assume that, yes, 2 adults and a child.
So you can convince everybody in this room that a bond is needed for a new high school or a high school and an elementary school. What are we going to do to convince the 12,000 voters that a bond is needed? What's the community effort that can be done to make that happen?
So all of you are already a part of this process that you're discussing. So it's you. Tell all your friends. We definitely are coming up with a plan on how to target all of those voters and be able to explain this and share facts and understand what is going on. At this point, we are at the early stages so that we can come to the table with more information. Because just like the questions you're asking, if I go out to try to talk to somebody about a bond, they're going to ask those same questions about what are you putting in? What is the safety stuff that you want, or what is this? And that's why we brought you guys here so that we can all sit down as a wide variety of people in our community and get a good idea of what we're focusing on, build that bond package, stand with that, well, actually present it to the school board, then move forward with that, and then we'll go to the community and be able to do different outreach activities, different campaigning things that will make sure that we're being clear to the whole community the need and the capacity issues and all of the things that we're discussing with you.
So this is kind of more on the financial side of things, but let's say we approve a bond, any bond, it doesn't really matter. And let's say it's a 20-year bond or whatever. And that I'm just kind of clarifying because I don't understand how it really works. So let's just say it's supposed to be 20 years. Is that based upon, when we add 800 more houses or 2,000 more houses in our area, should that not, there's more people paying into the final cost, does that lessen the amount of time? How does that work?
Christina could probably go more in depth with it, but the analogy I always like is the pie stays the same, but your piece of this pie gets a little bit smaller.
Exactly. So we would, at that time, the amount that we would levy would just be lowered. So we would have to continue the 25-year bond, but we would just, depending on the amount we're receiving, we would levy less each year. So every year that we take to the board and the budget committee, suggested levy of what we need to pay that bond for that year. And so if we are collecting more, we would for that year, we would lower the amount to collect. So if we start with a certain rate, right now I can't think of what number we're at. Like 1.26 per thousand. So if we are getting more and more taxes, we would go down 1.15. That's how it would work. The terms of the bonds do not change.
But it's such a house that each individual family may change.
So that
houses.
yes, exactly.
Just to add to that, the 2001 bond that was passed, it was passed at $2.02 a thousand. And so that's what went on the voters pamphlet on the ballot. People approved it. And then each year on November 15th, you get your tax statement. It has a line item dollar amount for that. But as it's broke down each year, because we're adding population and that tax roll gets larger, everybody's paying more property taxes. It's spread out so that piece of that pie is smaller and smaller. There's some other external factors. Yes. So that bond was $25.1 million in 2001. And so we said, okay, we're going to do a 25-year bond, which is going to eclipse in 2026. And so at that money will come off all of our tax bills. And so you'll see a decrease of whatever it is, $1.24 per thousand assessed value of your house. So then in 2027, that number will disappear. Does that make sense? Yeah, in the meantime, it goes down every year because we're adding more and more assessed value within the 97023 and 97022 zip codes that help lower that piece of the pie for each one of us. So it's spread over more people.
It's like your mortgage debt.
Yeah. So, yeah. I'll give Maggie the credit on that because that's how she explained it to me. It is like a mortgage. So your interest rate would just go down as an individual or a household with your property taxes as our population group. Correct? Okay.
So
everybody likes pie. It's better. I just want to give options. Yeah, exactly. Next meeting.
Okay, so the bond rate now is 1.26. So off of your comparison of passing it at over $2, that's evidence that as our population has increased. I also kind of compare it to, this is like taking out a mortgage and your mortgage stays the same, but if you get more roommates in, you get to split it up over more people, even though the cost stays the same. So yeah, like what we're saying.
On the other end of that, sorry, I can talk a lot. But on the other end of that, if you're like in the Portland Public School District where you're getting a mass exodus of people and businesses leaving, that when they pass a bond at $2.02 a thousand has the potential to actually go up because that tax roll is becoming less and less each year. Hopefully that doesn't happen in Escada.
I was just gonna say, I think this discussion might be something that the whole community needs to know, because if we're all like not understanding it and now we do, I think if the community understood it better, it would probably be easier to pass the bond.
That example that you were giving and where it was on the ballot at this price, and then this is where it is now, I think is a great example because we can all see that our population went up by 2,000 people or whatever, and now this is where we're at, where, all your pieces of pie is not as much.
And just one more question about that, because it seems like there also might be a really positive point in thinking about the time and point when a bond passes so that that rate is set. And then the projection of the number of additional households that would be added to that beyond that, which would all go towards reducing the payment. So like there's like a sweet spot of getting in and passing that so that then everybody who passes it can reap the benefits of the people who move here later.
I think another great thing about timing that I think we mentioned it in a past meeting too, but as our current bond comes to expire in 2025, that's when we have the great opportunity to introduce a new bond that kind of just goes on top of that thing that's falling off that can help keep costs a little bit more stable.
We really appreciate all the questions and the feedback because that is part of us reaching all of those voters is sitting here and understanding what the questions are being asked. Because if you guys have them, like you said, the community has them. And the ideas that are already on the table are town halls or meetings where we can all sit down and talk about bonds because they are confusing and we got to come up with a bunch of different analogies to explain it. This is the end of my slide. All right, so now on to group work sessions. Mike will go ahead and explain what's going on.
Before we get into this, I wanted to open it up to the group real quick just to find out, as we go into the next meeting and we're having these detailed conversations, what other information, resources, data do you need from us to start building those budget scenarios and where we want to focus? And so I want to open it up, like what else do we need to provide?
I was curious for the last time that we tried to pass the bond a couple years ago or whatever it was, if we have any specific data of why people chose not to support it. I know that the trajectory was like right on the fence. We sometimes thought we were going to be good, other times no,
Yeah.
and then it was a no.
Okay.
I'm curious on what we're up against
Okay.
or the literal element on and how close is that to some of the topics that we're bringing up that need to be on the table.
Okay, we can bring that next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, when we polled the community, one of the most recent times, we asked people if you did vote no on the bond, what were some of the reasons? Just so, like you said, we can learn. We can bring that to the group, but off the top of my head, one of the biggest things we heard was not the right time right now, which is tough because we talk about things like the economy being difficult, but it is also encouraging that maybe now or another time is a better time. So
In May, right at COVID, and everybody had that fear, so it was purely timing.
well, we also had a wildfire 2 months before the election. Yeah, it was unforeseen bad timing. Yeah, but we can bring some more of that data next time to look over.
other data points, information that we can bring either to the next meeting or in between this meeting and the next one to give you all, again, enough information to make informed decisions and recommendations.
Do you have data for the ratios? You know, there was ratios didn't come out of thin air, 30-1 or 35-1.
Yeah.
Where, is there measurable things that decline significantly past 35-1?
Yeah.
Or 27 or whatever it may be? And then if we have so many learning areas in Rivermill or Clackamas River, it seems pretty easy to say if we want 27-1, we have 20 areas, it means we can have X amount of kids. Where are we at now? And it looks like we're gonna run out real quick.
Yeah.
And if we run out, we're gonna start, you know, the learning environment's going down fast. We should be able to see that pretty easily, if that data is available. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so I've already reached out to some of our leadership while I was in the back to get some data or evidence that supports the ratio, and so we'll bring that information back, okay?
Yeah, I guess I really want I really want to understand exactly how the city and the school district are working together, and if they're not, why not? And, you know, but like school district as in like, when they when they do these permits and they, you know, I heard they're thinking about their structure, like the sewer systems and that stuff. But what I don't understand, I'm not seeing is like, why can't we ask these builders for more? You know, why are we making it so easy for them to come in and build? And why can't we change some of the things for them? Why can't we put more on them to say, you need to put more into our schools? Because this, you know, you're building houses for people, but we need, you know, so you know, when we say we can't stop them from coming and we can't stop it, we need to then figure out how to get them to help out more and what does that look like? And if they already are doing that, what is that they are doing? But it doesn't seem like we're getting very, we don't have enough, I don't think we have enough money coming from, I really think our builders are getting off scot-free and they're making a lot of money. And I think everybody in this room probably would agree with me on that. Like, why aren't they putting, I know they put in some, but I know that they make a ton.
Sure. Thank you for that input. I can't speak to, I don't know what impact or what ability the city has, and Melanie, you can speak to this, but to say, we're gonna raise your permit fees, I don't even know if that's possible, or if that's some kind of governing law or not, but that's.
That one, man.
Yeah. I got all night. You can go for it. You'd like to, I mean, again,
Where do we want to begin?
well, let's be succinct to it.
It's probably better if I don't, but I mean, first of all, there's a huge legal component to it. Am I on? That the city can't just grab things out of thin air and say, okay, builders, we're going to start doing that. The other thing is that all of us affect this. I mean, we can go through the room and go, well, I've been here 41 years, so everybody after 41 years has to pay more. Or we can say 5 years ago, or starting 5 years from now, everybody should pay. So, I mean, we all have a problem or part of this. I'm trying not to get emotional and hot-headed about it. Sorry. And from a builder standpoint, I can guarantee to you that we are not just making money hand over fist and not paying our fair share. I built a 1,500 square foot house recently. It was $32,000 for permits in the city. So some of that goes to sewer, some of it goes to water, some of it goes to roads. We do street lighting surveys, we do traffic impact studies. So all of these things are happening. The hard part is like you said, there's an impact to the school, but the city has no enforcement mechanism, and the school district has no enforcement mechanism to say, hey, Faraday Hills, you're building 404 houses. That's going to be roughly 401 kids over the course of these next 20 years. You have to build a school for us. And the other thing is part of the reason people are coming to Escada and building houses is because the environment is builder friendly. You could go to the city of Portland and spend $70,000 on permits and have property taxes that are 4 or 5 times this, and you're going to see all the building come to a screeching halt, and all the positive things that come with it, like nice subdivisions and affordable housing and all those other things that build a community, just stop. Sandy's working on that right now in the form of a sewer system moratorium where they're saying, we have all these approved lots. And 6 months ago, they said, okay, in 6 months, we're not going to do any, 6 months was the number, right? But they said, we're not allowing anybody else to build permits or build houses. Well, then recently they said, okay, now we're only allowing people to have houses that are doing small remodels to build houses. And so Sandy is going to be living proof of what happens when a jurisdiction says, we have no more capacity, we're going to put the brakes on. And you're going to watch Sandy probably shrivel up and die to an extent because they're never going to get in front of the sewer system, the traffic. They've already got the school system. So that box is checked for the time being. And so there's more to it than just charging the developers more. Because at the end of the day, it's a very free economic thing. And we're pricing houses accordingly to the market. And I say we, speaking for the builders, but we're pricing a $350,000 house because it's worth $350 in the market. If we charge another $10,000 just for the schools, everything's going to go up $10,000, including your house you're going to turn around and sell in 2 years, because that's just what the economy will do. So I know I'm rambling, and I tried to keep it PC.
You did just fine, Ben. Thank you. Thank you.
So I know that when Swickard Honda built their building off of McLaughlin and Gladstone, and they applied for their building permit, the building was so large that the fire department didn't have the means to respond to that fire. And they required Swickard Honda to remodel the fire building as well as provide a ladder truck that would be able to handle the emergency that would happen just at that one specific building. And they
Gladstone?
supplied it.
In Gladstone? Wow.
Yeah, and they supplied that because Swickard Honda wanted their building. So, and Ben, I agree with you. We want the building to happen. We want these good neighborhoods, and it shouldn't be just the responsibility of the builders. But why can't we come to a conversation to have the creativity that by land donations or multiple builders getting together for land, because the land is what's going to cost a big chunk of this bond. It's not just the construction of it all. It's part of the land. So is there some creativity that could happen with people that are issuing and getting permits and that kind of thing? So it's not a burden on just a particular group.
Thank you.
Going back to what Travis said, I agree with him wholeheartedly. I think that one of the things I wanted to just raise as a flag, though, is like we're selling a product at the same time. Our district's a good district. Our teachers are good teachers, and so there's a fine line between like making sure that we don't undercut who we're trying to support. And I don't think that you're saying that at all. So don't. But if we start going like the teachers can't handle, I worry about people stopping at that message versus the why, as far as why we're saying that. So just, and I know you guys are smart with your words, so just wanted to put that out there though.
Just a comment, having served within the city government, all those things you're talking about take long periods of time. There's all kinds of hoops they have to jump through. So just deciding to raise some fees doesn't happen in the next city council meeting. And has to go through a bunch of hoops. That's all I got. So just know that as we look for a school bond, those things wouldn't even be in place before this probably went out to vote.
Thank you.
Just a note to tuck away somewhere that there are a lot of questions about the city and the school district and what obligations or what is typical of other cities. I think because a lot of us are just looking at this specific situation. So having information prepared and ready to go when people are asking, why is the city not helping fund the school district? I mean, just having those things to help people understand the separation between the city government and the school district will be helpful.
Okay, we'll bring that to the next meeting, just a little more clarity. Find out why the city isn't helping us, huh, Melanie?
I mean, look,
The greater community, yeah, but, yeah. This kind of goes back to the question of we need to get out to the greater community. You all are going to help us do that, hopefully. So we need to be able to give you that information too. And so we can definitely bring it to the next meeting, but you're, like you said, further the conversation.
So I just wanted to state that the reason people are moving here and the housing is affordable and it's a nice area, that brings what families out here, like new families, young kids. So they will come out here, move to lower cost housing. They will be paying taxes, contributing to the district, and then paying into that need. So if you want to raise the price of things, make it more difficult for the housing, the district will be stagnant. There's a reason why we have growth. There's a reason why a lot of other districts do not, and they have a lot of trouble with their finances and they're up against roadblocks. And growth is key to keep that going. We kind of did it a little faster. I do think COVID was a limitation as far as getting the word out and spreading the word for the spot. Because I think this community supports the schools better than I've seen anywhere. I haven't been a lot of places, but this community is very good about that. So I don't think it'll be an issue if it's conveyed properly.
Thank you. I think good point.
I know another roadblock that might come up is Oregon is painted education as we're spending the most per child. We spend a lot of money in taxes per child. And so a lot of families say, well, we're already getting all these new kids, so all this money must be coming in. And how are we spending it wisely? And I think breaking that down, I mean, I know I have family that live out here that are like, why would we need to pay more? And of course, I have the buy-in because I'm here and I understand it. But there's a breakdown of knowing, our literacy levels as a state are very low and nationwide, but we spend the most per child. So where are they getting their bang for their buck, so to speak? So that's a huge roadblock that we need to get out and just educate.
Thank you. Comment right there. This is good.
When we talk about, I think the city and the schools, part of it is ignorance of just people in the community don't know that our school district does a good job because we don't see these things. We don't know that our city does a good job because we don't see what happens, because we just see the fruit of it a little bit in comparison to other communities where it doesn't happen. And on another note, whether the city pays it or the school pays it or the builders pay it, the people who buy the houses pay it in the end. It's the same in any economic situation. If I bought the house, I'm going to pay that 15 grand if the builder had to pay it, because that's going to go on my bill, or it can go on my bond, on my taxes. It's going to be the same either way. It's my kid going to the school, so I ought to be the one that pays it. But I think more transparency, not that we haven't tried, it's just on the community member side, they don't try. I never tried because you got to handle. So when it comes, I don't have time. And so when it comes time to vote, it's going to have to be thrown in their face to see that, we actually do a pretty darn good job of taking care of the money, taking care of our kids, using the most out of what we got. But we're going to have to be a lot of effort to show them, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
With that, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of the older generation that doesn't have children in the community. A lot of us are in the district right now. Most of us have our kids here, so we're involved. But you think of the older community and they don't necessarily know what's going on. And so we really have to get their buy-in to invest, right? For them, it's an investment because a lot of them are on fixed incomes. They don't want to see their taxes go up. But if they are start to get excited about what the district is doing because they see their grandkids doing well or their neighbors' kids doing well, and they're excited about it, then suddenly they're like, okay, well, maybe I will invest in this because I'm seeing good things coming from the district. And so we really have to channel our energy towards those people. I'm thinking of my own parents that are in the district. And so, when I talk to them, I'm excited and I get excited, hopefully that can, spill over to them and then they will invest in the future rather than just being like, oh, I hate my taxes going up. So
Thank you. Overwhelming, the themes that we're hearing, we got to get out there, boots on the ground to really campaign hard.
And I don't think last time that it was conveyed very well, the amount like per person, per household. Because really, the fundraisers that the kids' sports have been unbelievable. I mean, you have people throwing money at them. So the idea that people would balk at what I believe to be well worth the investment, I think just that needs to be conveyed, because it's, well, the last one wasn't much. And
Everybody get some pepperoni sticks.
Yes.
I think the last one too. So let's say we choose the most expensive bond. I think that's the easiest one to sell because we're getting a whole new building, right? So the bond before, when the questions were asked, what are you going to spend the money on? The message was not great. We'll figure it out when we get the money, is the biggest message I got from a lot of those
Okay.
meetings.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
I still voted for it.
Yeah.
But I didn't like that. I want to know where my money's going. So I think if we have the most expensive bond, it's clear.
Mhm.
It's clear we need it.
Mhm.
It's clear where it's going. And then it trickles down to all the other schools, which makes it even better. But I think as far as selling it, I think it would be much easier for the most expensive one because we have a vision and we have something tangible that we can really show people.
Yeah.
I think it'll end up being a very positive thing.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
I'm just going to respond to him. I'm working on a little calculator where you put in your assessed value and it'll show you what that would cost you. So we are working, and that would be posted on a website when we get that going.
But even this conversation, and I think we've had 3 meetings, and we've kind of gone back to this, what does this really mean to me in the money terms, is we have to hit that. And it's not easy. It's confusing at times. And is this the way we can simplify it the best way that we do that? So I appreciate the feedback. Yes, Jenny.
So each time, weren't there this? Okay, thank you, guys.
We're recording
Okay.
here.
But each time, wasn't there a school drawn up and stuff?
So no, yes and no. So the last bond effort campaign that we did had a concept design or design of renovating the front of the high school, of bringing the middle part where the offices are to the front, redoing the covered area. And so it wasn't a new building, but it gave us a rendering of what we were interested or what we were thinking about.
Okay, and the one before that, there was a.
I did. Yep.
Everything was there, right?
The 50 million one? 55.
And then that one was closer with the drawing and it was all, there was a whole diagram of it and everything.
Yeah.
So with this one, would we have it mapped out, like what we'd be going for and like where you're gonna build it and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
What you're gonna, everything that's gonna.
So going back to, that timeline of, let's say we pass the bond, we go out for the bond, we pass it, and then we start building our infrastructure of oversight, the key decision makers, the voice of our community, our families, our staff on if let's say we went out for the big one, right? And what would that building look like? Modern, modest style, we would want to make sure that we're getting the voice of our community and our staff before we put anything on a rendering to deter anybody. But to give the voters an idea, that's a little tricky because when we did it last bond, some feedback that we received that it looked too fancy, just the
Yes.
renovation. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a lot of people said.
Right.
There was a lot of windows. And
Right.
Sitting area.
Yeah.
And that's where I was getting at.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, and so if the board says, yes, district, go campaign for a bond, we want to do this, we do need to think about what conceptual designs or renderings we want to provide to the community to say, this is what a modern classroom looks like. This is what a facelift would look like, quote unquote, at the high school. This is what a new building would look like. And we would need to still get voice from our community. Yes, and that's going to be key to the messaging. Like, this isn't 100% what we're building. We would need to be very clear about it would be a rough draft conceptual design of what the voice of the community and staff are telling us.
I know you're familiar with Seaside High School, right, Jenny? You been there? So if you go on their website, they have a full-on bond portion of their website. But you can go back through the meeting notes and it goes through the renditions. At first, the bond is up for vote, and then they go through and they have like 3 different buildings. And then you look at those drawings and they are nothing like the building, but there's obviously core concepts that are the same. And part of it goes into how Weyerhaeuser donated 80 acres, and that, is a big step in the right direction for that bond. But it goes into the conversation we're having of, we need 2 new gyms. We need this. We want the middle school and the high school here. It's got to be out of the tsunami zone. And it just goes down. And it's kind of interesting to see that timeline and how things changed over time and captured that community feel. And there's still, I think, a committee that's part of the final parts of that bond that are, I think it's about Eclipse as far as the construction goes. But if you want to reference it, that would be something similar to what we would do.
Yeah, so that's exactly what the process, or a way of doing that process. And we would want to make sure that we're collecting the right voice. And to his point, like whatever they had conceptually designed, probably, I don't think the building looks anything like it. And so you can see how much it changes, but the core values are still there. Let's just draw a box. Okay.
I think it goes back to making sure the right message is getting out there. So I understand what you were saying, Jen, about like, well, we don't know. We'll find out when we get there. I think that I would argue it was probably more, we are going to come back and get your feedback once we know the amount of money that we have. It just maybe wasn't relayed in that way. I think sometimes people want to see building plans before they even vote. We want to know what we're voting on. And it's like, that's putting the cart before the horse, because we don't want to pay for those. And maybe that's not even what anybody wants. So taking the steps that we're going into and utilizing that timeline so that the feedback opportunities for our community are consistently throughout the entire process, and communicating why maybe we don't have the exact answer at the moment that people want it, because there's a purpose behind the way that it's going.
Yeah. One last thought is just building that trust, right? Rebuilding the trust with the community, with our transparency. And I think over the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've been doing a lot better on transparent communication on how we're spending our money, or taxpayer money rather. But we know from previous bond efforts, there's been some concern and the lack of trust. That trust is broken. So regaining trust is another phase of that campaign that we need to continue with that conversation with our community.
The demographic of the district has changed. The house.
Very much.
Sorry. So as that's changed, do we know how many households are involved? Do you have kids at the schools?
Yeah,
Because, like,
we
right now-
actually do. I can't tell you right off the top of my head. We got recent voter data. Based off the voter data, we take the data from our schools and say, okay, how many of these voters are actual parents? Did you guys look at that after I sent it to you? Okay.
And I apologize if this was gone
Oh,
over
no,
at
this
previous
is
meetings,
exactly what we want.
But a simple thing like right now, for baseball, for the kids that are in baseball,
Yeah.
we literally don't have enough fields for
Yes.
them to practice. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
very tangible problem, and we have that in every sport. So of those, I mean, I think we didn't have that, the district wasn't as engaged with the community because of circumstances.
Yeah.
For the last one. So
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
good point. We do have that data. I think Danny can get that to you. I was going to also say, to give us an indicator of what we might be seeing in the near future, go look at youth sports. Look at those kiddos that are just on the cusp or in that younger age, what's coming up. It's bigger than I've ever seen. I've only been here for 4 years, and this is crazy. This is remarkable. It's like, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking that, speaking of sports fields, we have that land that we just cleared and tried to level, and some sports are supposed to be out there, right?
Yes.
But you're also talking about putting maybe this new school
Yes.
there. So then we just eliminated a bunch of space.
Yeah.
So those things need to be, I think, transparent as well.
Yes.
Like this is the so where are we going to put these?
Mhm.
Where are we going to put our sports?
Yes, thank you. And that's one of the questions that we have as we look at some of these questions and discuss. Do we place it there? Do we find a new space for it? Is a question. Obviously, new land requires more money to purchase, and to lease out or whatnot. But yeah, you're exactly right. Where are we playing?
So not what I was originally going to say, but it sounds like this is a really great opportunity with a city partnership. Move that sewer and then we turn some of that Timber Park property into a sports complex. So not what I was originally going to
just
say,
in,
but
yes, thank you. I'm so glad that Melanie's here.
but have we had data on the professionals' viewpoint? As far as I know, there are some teachers and educators here in this group, but have the teachers been surveyed at large and provided quantitative and qualitative data about what it's like to teach in our current buildings?
So we have some level, and I'll tell you right now. So there's just two phases that I will talk about. We do a survey every 2 years, every 2 times a year. And it's called employee experience, and district services is another one. But in the employee experience that we just released, as I was looking through the comments, I would probably, this is anecdotal, but probably 80% had something to talk about the facility needs, and how we need to address that. So we're getting data from there. And then next week, we're doing a roadshow to meet with our staff to get more of that concrete. What do we need to tell our community about? What is it like teaching in a room that's 70+ degrees with 33 kids? How is it in a room with no windows? So we can actually gain that data, utilize it to make a decision, and also communicate with our community. And we'll report back next time we meet about that data. Yes.
How much acreage is required if we were to build a new high school?
I don't know the minimum requirement. This is a 180,000 square feet building. How many acres do you think this building's on?
I think the high school together is somewhere right around 37.
Well, but just the building itself. Let's say we just plopped it here. But how many feet are an acre there? 4,300? 43,560 is per acre. So calculate -2, carry to 3, 4 acres. Thank you. Yeah. And so we have 20 back there. We have an additional, is that 7? That little corner back there, that old tree farm is about 7 or 8 that we have. And so we do have some ability, or I guess opportunity, to rethink that space back there. All 20 wouldn't require the whole thing. We know we need space. We need field and park and rec space as we partner with the city on that. Is there that little corner lot back there an opportunity for some of that? And we're exploring that. There's not a lot of open space right now for just like, hey, we want to buy this space. But we are exploring some options that we've recently found to consider that.
One thing too is this is a 1-story building.
Yes.
If you went to a 2-story building,
Yeah. So thinking about building up is an option as well.
Does it have to be within the city limits? I mean, could somebody donate a bunch of land? You know what I'm saying? Somewhere.
I would imagine it just has to be in the 972223 zip, but that's a guess. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that as a guess, but I don't know the answer. I'll have to get back to you on that. Yeah, send them my way.
For the school district, for building?
Yeah, no, I didn't
So you're
think.
talking, it
Yeah,
would have to be within our boundaries.
within our boundary, but again, it could be, for example, like out in Eagle Creek or something like that, right? It just needs to be in our boundary. Yeah. The impact.
Zoning
Yeah.
works, and are we busing kids away from where the population center is? So that would have to be a big conversation, is what does zoning look like then? And weighing that against the benefit of having free land donated to us. Do you want to, Danny ran the numbers on percent of voters that are associated with our school districts. Do you want to chat numbers for a second regarding your question?
Okay, so we compared guardians to students that are currently in the district, and that number 1,930, thank you. And then just referencing that number that I mentioned earlier was 13,000.
13,000 voters?
Yes,
Yeah.
voters. So that puts it about 16% of our voters are guardians of a student at 16, yeah.
It's pretty cool that we got that data though.
It lets you know that the district does not win a bond just through district families, but how many people do those district families have in their sphere of influence is what we start to talk about then.
About this, like when we're talking about bond and getting a new high school, like I feel like we are like dissing on this high school, but aren't we still gonna use this one for the middle school kids or something?
Yeah, well,
So I feel like in the way that it's like coming out to me like, oh, the school isn't good enough for any high school kids, but here you're gonna move my middle school kid into that. So I'm like having
I'm glad you said that.
I mean, I have
Yeah.
a kid in each age group and I'm like, but my older one can't be in there, but you're gonna stick my youngest.
I'm glad you said that because we have been heavily talking about new building for today's learners and whatnot. And I think, again, our narrative we need to make sure our narrative says, like, we're going to still have kids in this building. So out of the $109 million bond, we know that X amount of million needs to go to the maintenance and care of this building to make it modernized and to support teaching and learning for today's learners. So we would still need to communicate we're investing in our current infrastructure and our assets. We don't want people think, oh, you're going to just shove my kid in this building now, and you're not going to put AC or whatever you think.
I think that's good work.
Right. I mean, but if you thought about it, that means other people are thinking that. Thank you. Yeah.
I know that I had mentioned to you a couple meetings ago, just like, well, along that same line, if you're going to make the middle school a grade school, where are those children going to eat? Because currently the middle school kids don't eat really in the cafeteria. So along those lines, I was thinking that knowing Boring Middle School and Nass Elementary, they are very close together, but the Nass Elementary kids come across and have their lunch at the middle school, or the other way around. I can't remember which way it is, but some of them walk
the
to they
transition
walk
to a
to the
different
other
school.
building to do their, to do that. So, if there's going to be something like that where it doesn't work, one school isn't really working, we have, think outside the box and, they can walk over to Clackamas River and have lunch or something like, I don't know,
I think you have a good point there. And again, the middle school cafeteria is it's a tight little area for a bunch of kids. And so, where we go with that, if it's expansion or thinking out of the side of the box on how we provide meal service, appropriate space for students to eat, that's a conversation we'll need to have.
But if we did build a new school, then we could probably move 7th and 8th at the high school and move some kids from the elementary to the middle school. And that would kind of solve some of our problems.
You guys are all, again, this is the point of this conversation and further conversations and of how we structure our educational system, right? Is that something that we would want to do? Bring 7th and 8th into the high school level? Is that, again, that's conversations that we would need to have. Beyond my pay level, no? Yeah. So, I mean, again, we're not saying yes or no or anything, but that's just, again, it's just a question. I appreciate you asking that, Mike. Or just come here. Oh, that too. They were talking about Seaside, how Seaside was built.
Built that way. No. It's the same building. Yeah. Sure, the cafeteria's in the middle, right?
Okay. This was actually turned out to be a good conversation. I was thinking, well, maybe it might be crickets, and because to be honest, I was just like, I was hopeful that we would have a healthy conversation about this, and I think that gave us a lot of information for us to bring back to the team next time we meet. Go ahead, Maggie.
I think ultimately our goal out of this answering questions and getting feedback from you guys is next meeting we're going to ask you guys to do pretty important hard work, which is starting to decide what things make the cut for you. And we need to know what you need in order to make those important decisions. So this has been really helpful to figure out what we need to bring to the table for you guys. So I appreciate all of the feedback.
I just have one more question, kind of, and maybe it's gonna be answered in the district, in the teacher survey or conversations. Understanding what best practices, what high impact practices that they are unable to currently carry out because of the confines of the buildings.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. That's a good question to ask them. We will put that on there. Thank you.
I will say just anecdotally, last time we went around to teachers, it was really impactful to hear some of the things that we in this group don't necessarily think of, like things that seem small to us, but look forward to bringing some of those ideas to this group and helping inform that work.
Because of sake of time, and I think at next meeting, we're going to really dive into prioritizing the bond packages. We're going to skip these questions. And I think from our conversation that we just had, help direct where we want to go for the next meeting and the next steps. I do encourage you to take these questions as, night material, reading material if you like, and to kind of thought-provoking material to talk within your family, within your community. Because again, you guys are all our champions getting out there, hopefully. And we're not in a campaign yet, but we do need to have the conversation started and whatnot. But from that, I think we're going to conclude the meeting tonight, and we're going to want to thank you. There's plenty of pizza. I bet he still wants some pizza. And please take some. Thank you all for the conversation, and have a good night. So, thank you.
April 18th is the next meeting.
April 18th.
And if you have not signed in on the signing sheet, can you please do so before you leave? Thank you again for coming.
If any of you would like to stick around afterwards and talk on camera about what this experience has been like so far, this is how we start telling the story to our community of what this long-range planning group is doing.
Yes.